Oh no. Otis Ray Redding Jr., a singer and songwriter, was born September 9, 1941. He is considered one of the greatest singers of soul and R&B, nicknamed the King of Soul, whose music crossed racial barriers with a singing style that influenced many artists of the 1960s until today. Otis was born in Dawson, Georgia, moving to Macon, Georgia at age 2. He quit school at age 15 to support his family, working with Little Richard's backing band, The Upsetters. In 1958, he joined Johnny Jenkins' band, The Pine Toppers, touring the southern states as a driver and singer, which ultimately led to a contract with Stax Records, who would release his debut album, Pain in My Heart, 2 years later. Otis would first play small shows in the American South, later performing at the popular LA nightclub Whiskey A Go Go, and toured Europe, performing in London, Paris, and other major cities. By the mid-1960s, Otis had released 2 best-selling albums of high-energy soul music. His third, Otis Blue, Otis Redding Sings Soul, was recorded in just one 24-hour session, having the song Respect, that singer Aretha Franklin re-recorded in 1967, becoming one of her well-known songs. Already a superstar of R&B and soul, Otis wanted to widen his audience and appeal, and performed at the Monterey Pop Festival in 1967 with another music legend, Jimi Hendrix. Both artists would cross over, playing for an enthusiastic audience who were mostly white. Otis had a deep respect and love for his touring band that he considered like family, the Bar-Kays, formerly known as the Imperials, a talented group of teenagers who were seasoned musicians from Memphis, Tennessee, having dreams of making it big. Otis Redding and the Bar-Kays record their performance on Upbeat TV show Saturday, December 9th, 1967 at 3 p.m., which would later air that day at 5 p.m. Afterwards, they played 3 shows at Leo's Casino, with the last ending at 1 a.m. They would head back to the hotel to sleep some before flying straight to the next 2 shows at the factory in Madison, Wisconsin, starting at 6:30 p.m. Otis had purchased his own private plane, a Beechcraft Model 18 twin-engine light aircraft, to make traveling on tour easier. Sunday morning, they arrive on the tarmac, meeting pilot Richard Frazier at the Cleveland airport. Richard Frazier had been flying for 1,290 total hours, with 118 of those in the H-18 type aircraft, and was also instrument rated. Otis takes a seat beside pilot Richard Frazier in the cockpit. Trumpet player Ben Cauley takes the seat behind Otis, with the other 4 members of the Bar-Kays, guitarist Jimmy King, organist Ronnie Caldwell, drummer Carl Cunningham, all 18, and saxophonist Phelan Jones, 19, all packed into the plane with their 17-year-old valet, roadie Matthew Kelly. Bar-Kay bassist James Alexander and vocalist Carl Sims took alternate transportation and would meet them all in Wisconsin. In Cleveland, there was rain and fog, with warnings to delay the flight, with heavier rain and thickening fog in Madison, Wisconsin. Despite the warnings to postpone the trip, the pilot started the plane, performing a normal takeoff at approximately 12:30 for the non-stop 400-mile flight. When the airplane was 10 miles south of Madison Airport, flight control was transferred from Chicago Federal Aviation Control to Madison. When the plane was 4 miles south of the airport, pilot Frazier was given clearance to land.
Clear to land, the 130-305.
Runway 4, clear to land.
While en route to Madison, most of the band members fell asleep, including Ben Cauley, who was then suddenly awakened and experienced the sensation that the aircraft was in a spin and falling. He looked over to Phelan, who was looking out the plane's window, who said, "Oh no." Ben unfastened his seatbelt, grabbed an object, possibly a seat cushion, as the aircraft plunged into Lake Monona. Ben found himself free of the wreckage in the frigid December lake waters, clinging on the object he grabbed, unaware that his head was swollen and bleeding. Only having one shoe, he heard Ronnie calling for help and started towards Ronnie's direction to aid him. However, Ronnie disappeared before he could make contact. Ben then heard Carl calling for help, but was too far away, and Carl disappeared. The water was so cold, Ben lost feeling in his hands, and with the lapping lake waters, Ben lost grip of the cushion. Not knowing how to swim, Ben started to fear he was next to disappear. But at that exact moment, a seat cushion floated up to Ben, who was able to grab, keeping afloat until a rescue boat arrived, rescuing Ben most likely minutes away from hypothermia. Scuba divers worked in short intervals due to the freezing temperatures when performing search and rescue. Later, after taken to the hospital, Ben kept asking if everyone was okay. Someone looked over and said, "You're the only survivor." Otis was found the next day when the lake was searched, still wearing his seatbelt in the cockpit with his headset still on. FAA official Robert Kinn later said contact was lost at 3:25 p.m. with no indication of trouble from the plane. Strangely, the accident report had short narrative, stating the aircraft crashed in the lake 3 miles from the designated runway with the left engine and propeller not recovered, with the probable cause undetermined. Ben told police that he overheard a mechanic at the airport say the battery system was not at full power, and Steve Cropper thought that the wings might have developed ice as they were flying over the lake. His loyalty to the fans was unwavering, and the Madison show was the only engagement Otis ever missed.
People at the airport told Otis he should not fly. Said the weather's too bad and you should not go. Said, you need to cancel this gig. And Otis said, man, I ain't ever missed a date in my life, and I'm not gonna start now.
After news of Redding's death, with the direction of the record label, Steve Cropper, a Stax producer and guitarist for Booker T and the MGs, locked himself in the Stax studio for 24 hours straight, mixing and putting the final touches on what would become Redding's biggest song, Sitting on the Dock of the Bay. Otis started writing lyrics to the song in August of 1967 while sitting on a rented houseboat in California. While touring, he continued to scribble lines on the songs of napkins and hotel paper. Co-written by Otis and Steve Cropper, the song was recorded by Otis twice in 1967, including the last recording just 3 days before his death. Otis considered the song unfinished, whistling as a placeholder at the end, planning to come back and record additional lyrics. There were rumors of Sam Taylor overdubbing Otis's weaker whistle. However, Steve insists Redding's original whistle was used on the final cut we hear. Cropper added the sound of seagulls and waves crashing, getting the idea of seagulls as Redding had been clowning around and attempting to sound like a seagull in the studio.
Otis had been clowning around, and if you ever hear the outtakes, he's clowning around trying to do a seagull sound in the front of the recording. And he sounds like a crow.
The song has a different style from most of Redding's other recordings. Jim Stewart, co-founder of Stax Records, couldn't understand why Otis wanted to veer so far away from his traditional R&B sound, initially not liking the song. Otis stuck to his gut feeling, not catering to the record execs, saying this is going to be my #1 record. Released in January 1968, the song immediately would go to #1 on the US Billboard Hot 100, selling over 3 million copies worldwide, holding the #1 position for 4 weeks, and becoming the first posthumously #1 record on both the Billboard Hot 100 and R&B charts. In 1999, BMI ranked the song #6 as the most performed song of the 20th century. The family would postpone the funeral from December 15 to December 18, so more could attend the service, which took place at the City Auditorium of Macon, Georgia, with more than 4,500 people attending the funeral, which overflowed the 3,000-seat hall. A few legendary music influences were in attendance, to include the godfather of soul, James Brown, a founding father of soul music, Solomon Burke, Stax alumni Wilson Pickett, and Booker T. Jones, who played the organ during the service. Otis would buy the Big Old Ranch, a 300-acre farm in Macon, Georgia, where he would move his entire family there, to include his children and his parents. Otis's wife, Zelma, made it very clear that Otis would be buried at the Big Old Ranch, later saying she loves having him there.
Bill Walden was his manager. He said, we want to bury him in Rose Hill. I said, no, he's going home. He's going home and put him in the front yard. And nobody's going to do anything about it. So he's at home in the front yard. I love having him there.
The entire Stax family was shaken to the core. Redding's premature death devastated Stax. By the end of 1968, Stax was left without one of its most successful acts and nearly all the songs the label had recorded. Atlantic Records, Stax distributor, was sold to Warner Brothers in 1967, who cited a clause in the original contract which gave Atlantic rights to all the master recordings between 1960 to 1967, which included the entire Otis catalog. Stax would later declare bankruptcy in 1975, and in 1989, the original studio was demolished. Fortunately, the Stax Museum of American Soul Music was later built in Memphis on the first day of May 2003, preventing Soulville's USA's incredible history being lost forever. Otis was described as trustworthy, vibrant, optimistic, with a great sense of humor, who had a magnetic stage presence, who was also a successful businessman who remained humble, never letting stardom change him. As owner of Otis Redding Enterprises, his performances, music publishings, and royalties from record sales earned him more than $1 million in 1967 alone, which is equivalent to about $9 million today. Otis was active in projects for the black youth, later to include summer camps for the disadvantaged children. Otis was on the verge of seeing all of his professional dreams come true, until his death just days after recording his biggest hit, Sitting on the Dock of the Bay. It's staggering knowing that Otis had produced 20 singles on the Billboard charts, all by the age of 26. He remains one of the genre's most recognized artists, influencing huge rock bands and musicians such as the Rolling Stones, Led Zeppelin, the Grateful Dead, Lynyrd Skynyrd, Janis Joplin and the Doors, along with virtually every soul and R&B musician from the early years such as Al Green, Aretha Franklin, and Marvin Gaye. Otis had the first song for any musician to be released posthumously to go #1 and receive many awards, including 2 Grammy Awards, the Grammy Lifetime Achievement Award, induction into the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame, the Black Music and Entertainment Walk of Fame, and the Songwriters Hall of Fame. Rolling Stone included 5 of Otis's songs as part of the greatest 500 songs of all time.
That was a tremendous loss for the entire world, but he left his mark.